Republican cruelty against the trans community continues as South Dakota officially bans gender-affirming care for trans youth, despite their increased rates of mental health issues and suicidality. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. So I know discussions about the trans community, transgender issues, transgenderism in general, it's evergreen, it's constant, and sometimes for good reasons, and other times for cynical, politically malicious reasons. Right now, we're in the thick of it because of the release of Hogwarts Legacy, the video game based in J.K. Rowling's wizarding world, right, set 100 years before the Harry Potter books. And, there are a lot of protests and discussions about whether or not boycotting that game would be a demonstration of true solidarity and alliance with the trans community. And I haven't weighed in much on this except for conversations, with Destiny about ethical consumption under capitalism. But this story that we're about to talk about, to me, is, I would argue, more important, right? Because this is an example of an actual state government, its legislature, its governor, legislating and enacting laws against the trans community, which will have meaningful impact on the trans community and perhaps is a bellwether, a harbinger of things to come. What am I talking about? Well, according to Axios, South Dakota has officially become the second state in the United States for officially banning, not proposing, but officially it's signed into law, it's a matter of fact, banning gender-affirming care for trans youth. So it's the second state to ban gender-affirming care for transgender youth after Republican Governor Kristi Noem signed the controversial bill into law. South Dakota is one of several GOP-led states escalating attacks on trans rights through legislation that often targets youths. And this is particularly troublesome. It should be immediately evident, right? Always attacking or restricting the rights of minors when those rights are necessary. That's bad enough, but we'll get into why this particular demographic, why this particular subset of America's youth, why restricting their rights is even more harmful than that. We'll get to that in a second. More than 24 bills targeting trans health care were introduced at the start of 2023 legislative sessions. And we talked about that in a video either a couple of weeks ago or it was probably at the beginning of January. It's just madness, right? Here's why this is dangerous. It'd be dangerous if South Dakota were the only state, or even only the second state, and it stopped there. It would still be dangerous, right? Because we're talking about trans youths who live in South Dakota. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of state legislatures in the United States, I think like 30, they are controlled by the Republican Party. It'd be bad enough if it were in just any one, but we're not really talking about any one. We're talking about attempts that could be very successful. There are going to be attempts by Republicans to legislate against trans youth or to legislate against their health care in all 50 states because Republicans exist in all 50 state legislatures. They're going to make attempts, right? But those attempts could indeed be very successful in the majority of U.S. states because a majority of U.S. states are controlled by Republican legislatures, and there's usually the party that controls the legislature usually has a governor of the same party, right? So in situations like Kentucky, for example, Kentucky has a Democratic governor, thank God, but it also has a Republican supermajority, right, that can override a Republican veto. You run into situations like this. But this is a dangerous harbinger of things to come, much more dangerous, in my opinion, than the cultural implications that are associated with a creator of a video game, right? Not even a creator of a video game, a creator of an IP associated with a video game. This is the stuff that we really need to be focused on. I guarantee you that this is going to fly under the radar compared to something like Hogwarts Legacy. But we need to be focused on this, right? More than 24 bills targeting trans health care introduced at the start of state legislative sessions this year. And I think last year we saw like 145, right, throughout 2022 that were introduced and made its way through the legislative process. 140 freaking 5. And we're what? Halfway through February and 24 have already been introduced? It's mind-boggling. This is setting the stage for a truly dangerous pace of socially regressive legislative bills against the trans community. So, the law bars healthcare workers from prescribing puberty blockers and sex reassignment surgeries. It does not prevent provisions of services to minors born or diagnosed with medically verifiable disorder of sex development. But, the puberty blocker thing in particular, And I think it even says that, like, it says it in the next quote. I'm signing HB 1080 to protect our kids from harmful, permanent medical procedures. I will always stand up for the generation of South Dakotans, the next generation, according to Governor Noem. Puberty blockers aren't permanent, right? They are meant as a stopgap measure, right? If a trans person is wanting to transition, right, puberty blockers will delay. It will temporarily delay the permanent effects of puberty, right? So if you're a trans minor, you know you're trans, you're thinking that you may potentially want to transition physically, puberty blockers will buy you time to, get the mental and physical guidance you need from a physician, a psychiatrist, a psychologist to really evaluate this. And then once you get off the puberty blockers, puberty resumes, right? It's a temporary measure. It's not permanent. And it's actually, according to the studies that I've seen and according to the reports I've seen, puberty blockers are a very important, very efficacious tool for helping trans people sort this stuff out, right? And there are situations where trans youths get on puberty blockers, they have time, and then they reconsider and get off the puberty blockers and then go through puberty, in the way that their sex assigned at birth, like, would naturally progress, right? Other times, the puberty blockers help give them time to make the decision that they do want to transition. So it's just the whole thing it's an exercise in cruelty and virtue signaling. So reputable medical groups, including the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association and the American Association of Pediatrics, right? So every major medical association that we all defer to, every single one of us, anytime we go to the doctor, anytime we take our kids to a pediatrician, anytime we go get mental health, we always go to experts that employ best practices and, the prescriptions associated with these groups. But apparently when it comes to the trans youth, we have no trust or regard for their recommendations. Whatever. That's, again, it's an incoherent paradigm as far as I'm concerned. But those groups, those highly reputable groups, have warned of the negative mental health impacts spurred by restrictions on gender-affirming care, especially for trans youth who have an increased risk of suicide. And that's the big one. It's bad enough to pick on kids in any situation. Certainly when you're a legislature or a governor, you're wielding state power. But this subset of kids in particular have a disproportionately high risk of suicidality. So you shouldn't pick on any kids, but they should be the ones you pick on the least, right? I mean, my God. And then according to a January 2022 survey by the Trevor Project, found that over 2/3 of LGBTQ youth, so not just trans people, but also, again, gays, lesbians, genderqueer, they said that the recent debates and the progress made by anti-trans laws have hurt their mental health, which could also contribute to increased risks of suicidality or self-harm. So it's ridiculous. Now, the White House has condemned this law by Kristi Noem in South Dakota, and the Department of Justice has said that blocking access to treatments would violate federal constitutional and statutory provisions that protect transgender youth against discrimination. So it may very well be challenged by the Department of Justice. I hope so. But again, this is an exercise in cruelty, and also an exercise in misaligned priorities, right? Transgender care, transgender affirming care, according to all the data, is overwhelmingly positive. It's not harmful for trans youth, right? It can only help them. Nobody's saying that you take an 11-year-old and get them gender reassignment surgery. We're talking about a careful, medically approved process that involves the guardians, that involves, physicians, that involves psychiatrists, that involves psychologists. This is a measured, tempered approach, and it could meaningfully reduce the rates at risk these people kill themselves or that they suffer mental health issues. So stuff like this is, again, just an exercise in cruelty. The Republican Party in South Dakota could be focused on the economy. They could be focused on, reducing the wage gap. They could be focused on, all kinds of issues, addressing climate change, whatever it is, like actual priorities that matter to the majority of the American people. But instead, they're choosing to pick on a marginalized group, which has already been picked on more than enough. So we'll see where it goes from here. Hopefully the DOJ will challenge it and defeat it. but we'll see. And I would encourage anybody watching to focus less on, again, things like Hogwarts Legacy, to whatever extent that matters. Focus instead on this. This, to me, is much more important. Maybe I'm wrong. Don't think I am, because we're talking about state action. And again, it's not even proposed state action. This is now, as of now, this is law. This is the binding law in South Dakota. And this may very well cause people to hurt themselves or worse. So let's keep our eyes on the prize. Hey, you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.